Welcome back to another episode of our Straight to the Point series with your hosts, Emily Fitz and
Margaret Austin.
more on that in a minute. This is going to be a two-part episode, a little recap, a part one recap of Unbound, the retreat, which we're going to dive into inside of this episode, really the essence of Unbound, the story of how she came to be and the evolution of her, as well as the really beautiful, powerful intentions for, we'll share about our experience, our personal experience at Unbound, both being a facilitator and Margaret being a seva. Seva translates in Sanskrit to being of selfless service. So it's a really beautiful opportunity for women who have previously attended Unbound as a participant and as a guest to step into more of a service role, strengthening their leadership inside of retreat spaces and really showing up in service to Unbound, to the facilitators, and to the participants to support everything and running really smoothly throughout the weekend. I want to start off first by just kind of sharing the story of Unbound, actually, and how it came to be. I think it's really important. So a year ago, over a year ago. It was a year ago that we completed the first Unbound, which is so crazy.
So wild.
We
live literally 9 lives in between.
I know. So much has happened, so much growth, probably the year of like the most internal and spiritual growth I've ever experienced. And I think all the women that have come into this space and into this vortex in any regard have also experienced a huge quantum leap in their just internal trajectory. So over a year ago, it was actually about February, I think, of 2022. And I had actually reconnected with Morgan and Shiloh, who I co-facilitate Unbound and Rapture with. And I'd met them at a gathering. And we had a mutual friend, 11, who I had ended up traveling to Peru with back in 2019, which is where 11 and I met. And then Morgan ended up meeting me through 11 and hiring me as her business coach, literally during the height of COVID. And I think we worked together for about 9 months or a year, kind of off and on. And at the time, Morgan's partner, Shiloh, who, we're just both really, really in this, like all three of us were just kind of reconnecting in the vortex of sisterhood, I guess. Right. And I remember seeing them at a gathering and thinking to myself, like, oh my God, like, do they want to host a retreat together? Like it just like came out of the blue, but it was just like being with them and almost this like soul remembrance, the sacred remembrance of a contract that the three of us had really signed in the beyond to incarnate here to fulfill this mission of really supporting and awakening and activating women into their highest timeline. And so I remember reaching out to them and being like, would you guys want to run a retreat together? And they were like, well, let's get together and chat about it. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's meet here at Bolden Creek Cafe, which is in Austin. And it's like a part, vegetarian, vegan cafe. And I remember at the exact table we sat outside under the tent and we all looked at each other and we're like, okay, are we doing this? Like, I think we're doing this. And it really was in that moment. And we couldn't even see it then because we were such different people. We couldn't even see, right, that we were entering into a really deep, important, and powerful contract to co-facilitate these spaces together. And yeah.
To say the least.
And we ended up getting together, I think maybe later that week or the next week. And we sat with Hape, which was kind of new-ish to all of us. Like we were newish to me, a little less newish to them. But we were, all of us just really, we decided to sit with some Hape, which has become like kind of the glue that's bound all of the retreats together. It's been a really powerful ceremonial activator in all of these spaces we've co-created. And so we sat with Hape and we just allowed the retreat to start talking to us. And I remember we had the Rebecca Campbell deck out and we were pulling cards. It was the Work Your Light deck. And we had a whole spread and we were just kind of pulling cards, which we do for every retreat now. We literally just pull cards and see what comes, like what wants to be, activated in that conversation. And we were sitting there and it wasn't even a card we pulled, but I just literally went, unbound, unbound, forever unbound, which is in the book. And it's so funny. I'm like feeling like teary because it's just taking me back to that first moment when we were listening to the deep call of what this retreat experience wanted to be. And we didn't even know that we were going to run a second retreat, let alone a different retreat, let alone have run 3 retreats within less than a year. But I just remember the calling home to Unbound. Yeah.
That's special. I didn't know that that's how it went with sitting with Hoppe and pulling the cards. And Hoppe has been such a massive piece in all of this. Shout out to Hoppe.
Shout out Hoppe. For those of you that don't know what Hoppe is an indigenous snuff that's a combination of different leaves, barks, branches, tobacco specifically, which is a very grandfather medicine. And the tobacco snuff, the indigenous snuff, is really used in activations, in ceremonial initiations, and it's also really useful in grounding you into your body, into your physical body. So a lot of the women who've come into our world who maybe have never experienced Hoppe before now have a Hoppe practice, or it's a tool that they use. Again, it's a plant ally or a plant essence that you can utilize in your practices to really go, in my opinion, deeper into the somatic body, and also really be initiated into some deep and powerful activations and timeline jumps in a lot of ways. We've used it in so many different ceremony spaces and non-ceremony spaces for some really powerful and important activations.
Yeah. Hoppe has been really powerful for me too. I mean, the first time I did it, it was such a powerful experience, and was also a really deep experience because it was truly the first time I had ever experienced being in my body and out of my mind, dropped out of my mind and into my body. And it was at that time a very foreign experience. And Hoppe's been such a teacher for me, such an initiator and a guide in so many ways, in so many aspects of my life. Within that experience, and then, carrying that and integrating what I've learned in my life. So, and you initiated me into my name with Hoppe, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important part of this weekend. And, one of my, I would say one of my intuitive gifts is my capacity and my ability to hear the voice of the retreat, or to hear the voice of the offer that's wanting to be created in the world. I really, really believe, like anything that has energy, these spaces that we are being called to co-create with the divine, our higher self, spirit team, have souls, right? They have desires, they have wants, they have needs, they have personalities.
They definitely do.
They definitely do. And it's been a really beautiful initiation into some of my deeper gifts, my deeper intuitive gifts, to be able to hear the voice of these retreat spaces. And so, in the first cultivation of Unbound, it was really an initiation for all of us. It was the first in-person retreat that myself, Morgan, and Shiloh had run together. We knew it would never be the same. And we also knew that Unbound was really, really important in healing and clearing some of these deeper sisterhood wounds, so that we could continue to show up and create spaces and hold spaces where that thread of the feminine gets to be healed.
Mhm.
And night and day, right? Like less than a year, night and day from the first Unbound to the second Unbound. And you've been to all the retreats. And so, and you can speak to that. Just Whew, yeah, I mean, there almost like are no words as to
Mhm.
how different those experiences were and how deeply all of us, have really truly been forever changed from, just our agreement to saying yes to learning and growing and creating together in these really beautiful unknown spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even I feel like the Unbound definitely has carried an energy, all the way through from both Unbounds and the work that was done at the first Unbound and all the work that you three have done in between, the women who have been at all the retreats have done in between. It just also brought a extremely deep, potent frequency to this last Unbound. Like it was such because this past I can't even believe that there have been 3 retreats in less than a year.
I
And
know.
so using this retreat and seeing the mirrors and everybody, you, Morgan, Shiloh, the mirror of myself, what is able to happen in such a short period of time when we lean into this work and lean on each other and step out of our wounds and out of isolation
Hmm.
and really have found our way back to each other and found safety again in community versus that isolation piece.
Yeah.
Not only yes at the retreats but then the relationships that we've carried in between. It's
Hmm.
just really powerful to see the healing and the transformation that gets to continue to evolve through unity and sisterhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that you said that too, because even though Unbound has evolved and grown and shifted and morphed and changed in a lot of the ways that it has, the essence of Unbound is the same. The heartbeat of
Yes.
Unbound is the same. And it was actually made very, very clear to me prior to this second Unbound post Rapture, which is usually our fall retreat, which we'll be doing another November 2nd through the 6th Rapture, which is a totally different retreat
Extremely
experience.
different,
Totally different
insanely different,
personality,
very
totally different
different.
retreat. she's a world all her own.
She's
And
wild.
she's wild. And when we sat with the Unbound container, so we did a medicine ceremony prior to the I think it was right at the beginning of the month, and we were opening up the
Mhm.
Unbound portal. So the retreat actually kicked off May 18th, but we opened the Unbound portal the very first weekend of May, leading
Mm.
into that this next month. And in that space, I dropped right in, and I was really able to hear and translate what she was telling me and what she was speaking to me. And the first thing she said, and this is so great, she's like, I am not Rapture. Don't try to make me Rapture. Don't even put me in that box, right? Not that Rapture's in a
Yeah.
box, right? But Unbound was like, don't try to recreate Rapture, because that's not what I am. Those aren't the gifts. Those aren't the unique gifts that I hold and carry for women.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really clear that Unbound, and this is also what she said. She goes, I'm the primordial. I'm the
Mhm.
grandmother. I'm the mother essence. I'm the original, right? Everything you create is a thread of Unbound, right? It comes from the original seed of
Yeah.
creation and contract. And so, it was really a beautiful opportunity for us to really like bow in reverence and honor to this entity, this energy that is Unbound.
Mhm.
And through that lens, be able to hear what she's desiring to facilitate, to co facilitate in that space. Because, yes, there are 3 facilitators, but there's actually 4, right? And the 4th facilitator in those spaces is the energy and the essence of the retreat itself. So
Yes.
Unbound is its own medicine woman, right? Who's doing and working each of the participants in her own beautiful way. And so this is why we always say anytime you go to any retreat, it's all as soon as you say yes, as soon as you make that both energetic but also that financial commitment that goes, I'm here, I'm going, I'm officially in, and you make that decision for yourself, the retreat experience already starts working for you, with you, and through you. So we invite women to really pay attention to what's starting to show up in your life, what experiences are being activated within you, what initiations are starting to happen, what thoughts, what messages, what downloads, what things are falling away, what things are falling apart, right? Because all of that is actually supporting the highest good of what you are choosing to step into. We have a Telegram thread on the back end of the retreat for women to stay connected and be supported in their integration from the experience. And we always say integration is the most important part, because without it, we're just getting high and,
Mm-hmm.
doing our thing. But
Yeah.
integration and life is actually the real medicine journey, because life is where we really integrate this new way of being into our or this sacred remembrance into our physical bodies, and we walk in a new way. We're more embodied in a new way, and it can be
Mm.
really, really confronting on the back end of the retreat experience. And I shared with some of the women um, that anything that's not in service to your highest timeline, like when they said yes to Unbound, when they said yes to themselves and coming to the retreat, they said yes to the timeline of their highest self.
Yeah.
And so when they leave that retreat space, anything that's not in alignment with that highest timeline and with their highest self is going to fall away. They're going to be confronted with thoughts, beliefs, ways of being, isolation, depression, right? Like anything
Yeah.
emotional, mental, physical, relationships, partnerships, business, clients, business, work, anything not in service of their absolute highest timeline is
Mm.
literally falling away, myself included, so that
Same.
they can continue to walk in that frequency, in that energy of who they've always been,
Yeah.
right? Who they've always been. I guilty as charged, I've very much talked a lot about over the years, like who you are becoming, but it's actually who you are unbecoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's the stripping away of all the illusions, the lies, the beliefs, the narratives, the paradigms, the thoughts that have been placed upon you since you
Mm.
literally came out of the womb, even before in the womb space,
Mm.
right? it's the
Yeah.
it's the unbinding of all of those narratives and those elements, so that you can remember the truth of who you are, the pure essence of who you are, the light, the divinity of who you are, beyond all those stories, beyond all those
Mm.
narratives. And so,
Yeah.
that's really the essence of Unbound strips it all away, so that when women choose to return in the fall in rapture, right, the seeds have already been planted, and now it's time to really rise into that feminine power. It's really time to
Mm.
activate that dark feminine energy. It's really time to activate that wild essence, right? That is kind of a rewilding of sorts. And so
Yeah.
it's really beautiful to be able to see both of those different energies and essences, and how they want to work with women in different ways, that we both get to be honored, right? Which again is still more of the healing of that sacred thread of the feminine, because again, we don't have to like compare ourselves, right? It's not about comparing Rapture and Unbound. They're two completely different, unique experiences, just like the divine souls that we are, right? So there's no sense in
Right.
comparing yourself to this woman, or this sister, and going, well, she's better, or this is better, right? Because that's just creating more self-judgment and comparison and less than, and all of the things that we're here and committed to healing. So of course, this is how the microcosm of these retreat experiences would be, because they're their own playground of what the
Mm.
work really is.
Yeah, that piece around unbecoming, I think can be such an edge. I can speak for myself. was such an edge, even from the last Unbound, of really understanding that it's more about the unbecoming than the becoming. Because the ego wants to just like do the next thing. I want to expand. I want to be somebody else. And it's like this not wanting to be where you are, not wanting to be who you are and look at the parts that are already here. Like everything that we need is already right here. But I think it's scary for a lot of people. I can speak for myself. It was scary for me to really come to that realization that I don't need to look anywhere else outside of myself. It's more about the unraveling of who I thought I had to be, which can be such a trip for the ego that, wants to go and achieve and do more and more and more. And I know, that was a process for the woman at this last Unbound. It's still a process for me. And even in integration now, it's still a process of really returning back to that truth. Again, it's not about what you need to do. It's about allowing yourself to release the shame, or even integrate yourself with the shame and create a relationship with the shame that's telling you that you need to be somewhere else, that's telling you that you should be feeling a different way right now. Because we don't step into these retreat spaces to transform overnight. We step into them so we can learn how to love ourselves and be with ourselves and walk with ourselves through all of it in our wholeness, not in perfection, not in everything's rainbows and butterflies. It's teaching us, how to create that deepening within ourselves, not the going somewhere else.
Yeah. And the acceptance of all parts. I love how you put that, and I was even listening to a podcast episode before this by this woman, Taylor Simpson, called the Embodied Woman podcast. And she was talking about the void, right? And the void is where all timelines exist simultaneously at one time. And in order for us to have the things that we desire, we have to go through the void. But the void is really scary to the ego because the ego believes that it's dying, right? And that the ego's sole desire and mission in life is to survive, right? So it's going to do everything it can to protect itself so it can survive, because without the body, without the ego, well, really without the ego, we have no human experience.
Yep.
And so anytime we pattern interrupt, or we choose our higher timeline, or we step into the unknown, we step into the void, we're initiating ourselves into an identity death. And the ego literally thinks, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm dying, right? But it's in the magic of the mystery, the unknown, the void, the 5D, the quantum, where all possibilities and timelines exist simultaneously at one time. So in that void, we get to choose so much magic. We get to choose so much expansion. We get to choose so much power. We get to choose so much presence. We get to choose so much abundance. We get to choose everything and anything we could ever want and desire. But we have to be willing to walk through the fire of discomfort of this identity death so we can continue to upgrade on a cellular level, like who we are at our core, pure essence. Right? Again, it's the stripping away of all of those pieces. And so, especially if there are any women from the retreat that are listening to this podcast too, or women who are headed to a retreat, or women who are thinking about coming to Rapture, or coming to another Unbound next spring, my invitation to you is to just start that conversation, right? Start the conversation with your ego. It's not that we want to get rid of our ego. Our ego is part of the experience. We can't have this human experience without it, right? But it's our relationship to the ego that gets to change in the process. So start the conversation of saying, it's okay. You're not dying. I've got you. We're safe, right? And also pay attention to the different places and spaces that you are feeling aligned and called to go, to invest in, to say yes to be a part of, different experiences, friendships, relationships, opportunities. Because again, that is you entering into the void and creating a new timeline for yourself. And simultaneously, there may be some stripping away and some identity death on the other side of that, but we can't get to the other side unless we're willing to walk through that discomfort. So
totally,
it's all part of it. And the less we judge the experience as wrong or bad or black or white, or this should be happening or this shouldn't be happening, right? That's when we get stuck and we get trapped in the whirlwind of the mind, right? We get sort of like sucked into the prison of our own making. And so, my invitation for you is to just step back and start to see everything just as is, right? Everything just is. And the less we identify with what is, and the more we allow those emotions and those thoughts to just simply move through up and on their way out, then the more we can stay in the flexibility of that unbecoming.
I love the way you said that. I'm curious for you what you feel. I know there are probably a few different pieces, but prior to Unbound and then in Unbound and now integration after Unbound, what do you feel have been the deepest unbindings for you?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I really showed up in that space shifting
Mm.
what I do in the world, right? Listening to the deeper call of what my higher self is inviting me into, and really staying present to receiving the reflections of how other women see me, right? Because one of my shadows is that I have a really hard time seeing myself.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's my Chiron in my second house. I think we figured that out, which is all about self-worth. So it's like really
Mm.
hard for me to see my own unique gifts and abilities. And so I've had to really presence my energy and my attention on how other people see me, and then using that reflection as an opportunity to recode that blueprint within my
Yeah.
physical body and within my, kind of my neural pathways. And so it was a huge, right? I was kind of existing in the metamorphosis, in the unknown, in the sticky ooey goo, the formless throughout
Mm-hmm.
the weekend of Unbound. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, having a lot of women in that same ooey gooey, formless, cocoon of a butterfly before she becomes a butterfly, right? She's a sticky ooey gooey, like formless sludge, right? And so a
Yes.
lot of the women were walking through that initiation, which Unbound, what she's really saying too is like, Unbound is the void. Unbound is the mystery. Unbound is the deep
That's
feminine.
so
Unbound
true.
is the unknown, right? And so
That's so true.
it's like, when we opened that portal, it was basically like activating the womb space of Unbound. She's the unknown. She's the void. She's the space where limitless and infinite timelines and possibilities get to simultaneously coexist at once. And all we have to do is decide and choose which path with every breath, which timeline with every breath we want to step into and onto. And then life is going to meet us there, right, with anything and everything that is in support of that vision. And oftentimes that means things that will strengthen us. They'll feel like tests from the universe, right? But it's really to support us in walking that path. It's really to
Yes.
support us in staying strong in that timeline, in that frequency, so that we can hold for the more of who we are.
Yeah.
So, for me, that was very present throughout the weekend of Unbound, and also simultaneously being in a facilitation role, and also being in my own initiation and being my own experience, right? And the Jedi ninja mastery shit that takes to be able to like
Mhm.
hold both of those pieces and parts, and to hold for every other woman's unbecoming story simultaneously. And then
Yeah.
on the back end of Unbound, in the integration and in the initiation and in some of the deeper work that I'm now getting to do within myself post retreat, has been really going to the root of that unworthiness story, right? The
Mm.
shadow of unworthiness that has been lingering, just hidden in plain sight, if you will.
Mm.
And I've done a lot of work on that story. And it was like, okay, there's one more layer, right? And I'm sure there'll be another layer. And how I like to always think about it and envision it is this spiral, right? And I never really think of a spiral up, which some people do. I like to think of the spiral down, because it's
Mm.
actually a deepening inside of ourselves. It's
Yeah.
a deepening into those pieces within that are inviting us to look and to free ourselves from the lies, the illusions, the misunderstandings that we were never worthy to begin with, right? And so
Mhm.
this shadow of unworthiness for me has shown up in every area of my life. It's shown up in the way that I don't take care of my body. It's shown up in the way that I don't get enough rest. It's shown up in the way that I overspend in my business. It's shown up in the way that I don't believe that I'm worthy of charging X amount of money, right? Like, it shows up in so many different ways.
Mm.
And I've really had to clear some shame around that, but also to really strengthen in my own discernment and strengthen in my own ability to sit back and just be with that part, right? Again, I've even had to use my own tools, right? I'm like, if this part of me was never going away, how would I be with it? I certainly wouldn't be like, I need to get rid of this unworthiness story. I need to purge this unworthiness story, which there is that part, right? But then there's also the essence, which is like, it's okay. You can stay as long as you like. I've got you.
Yes.
Right. And it's changing the relationship to the unworthiness story and seeing it as this is just a part of me. It's a part of my story. It's not the whole of who I am. And so in that, I get to just shift my relationship and my connection with that part and see it for what it is versus buying into the identity that I'm not worthy. It's just a part that's looking to be met and released in every moment as I continue to up level in my decisions and the ways that I'm showing up in the world. And guess what? I worked out twice this week. And we're gonna meal prep this week.
I love
right?
it.
And we're making these new decisions of ways that we're showing up in the world. And I'm getting back into some really important practices for myself. Right. So it's like, what a gift that was activated. It was super fucking uncomfortable. And I had to sit through so much, right? All the layers and all the pieces. And I understand that. And when you're in it, oh my God, it's like, really, we're here again. And the medicine in that was for me to expose a deeper layer of that part that's gone, that's been hiding, and then to be able to shift that in real time. And then again, to be the mirror, to be the leader, to be the way shower for other women, to show them like, it's okay. It's going to feel really uncomfortable, but it's safe to do this work. And I'm in it with you.
So you've walked through and transmuted a lot within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, like, every corner of your life I'm really hearing has been gosh, but I really see you in the ways that you've shown up. And I mean, your own deepening that happened, even before Unbound kicked off, and you really walked into Unbound with such an openness in your heart, which absolutely carried with you throughout the weekend and was also so felt, I know, by myself and the other women who naturally gravitated towards you for support in their own parts that they were working through in that formless, mushy state. Like, when you go into Unbound, it is literally a portal. You don't know what time it is. You don't know what day it is. You don't know if you got 30 minutes of sleep or 8 hours. Like, it just... you just don't even know, and it doesn't really matter because you're there and you're there. Like, it is extreme presence, even off the medicine. It's extreme presence with what is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, what is there more to say?
Yeah.
Exactly. So what I think we should do is a part 2. We already said we're going to do part 2, but do a part 2 where we get to speak into some of the like really powerful moments for you, the name initiation and, everything that came with that for you, and stepping more into leadership and facilitating some beautiful spaces of transformation for women, the reflections that you also received in those spaces, and maybe even speaking into like, what was that like to step into the role of Seva and really show up, in service to the women of that space and the greater good of Unbound. So
I love that.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning into part 1. We will be back with another episode of Straight to the Point series with Unbound Recap Part 2. For those of you that are curious and interested in doing some of this retreat work, we have another retreat coming up in November called Rapture, November 2nd through the 6th. She's a wild one, and calling it a whole different experience. Margaret can attest to the initiation that is Rapture. And, please reach out to us at Straight to the Point series on Instagram. Shoot us a message and let us know you're interested in the retreat. There are a max of, I believe, 25 spaces, and they're going to fill and fill fast. So if you are wanting to journey with us in that beautiful space and you have questions, then feel free to reach out. You can also follow along on TikTok at Straight to the Point series and our YouTube Straight to the Point series.
Mhm.
And we're on Apple and Spotify. If you feel called to leave a review, it helps to get more of the word out there and get this message out there. Um, Shout out to Brock Johnson for
I
giving
was
us a
just gonna say, shout out to Margaret.
huge for giving us a huge bump in our community and in our followers. More Jock Bronson content definitely coming your way soon. Again, we're just kind of coming back into our physical form from Unbound, and so that content feels a little far from where we are in this exact moment, but I promise you it's coming.
Yeah.
And you can follow me directly at the.emilyfitz on Instagram.
And you can follow me at truly_Margaret.
Yay! All right, guys, we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.